Just 3 minutes ago, the palace released a confirmation so delicately phrased, yet so heavy in implication, that it immediately unsettled royal watchers across the world. The statement did not name a crisis, nor did it dramatize events. Instead, it acknowledged a shift concerning Prince Louis that insiders say has been quietly anticipated, but never expected to be confirmed so openly. For years, Prince Louis has been seen as the joyful counterbalance within the royal family, spontaneous, energetic, and often captured in moments of innocence that reminded the public of the humanity behind the crown. Today's confirmation casts a shadow over that image. Not through scandal, but through something far more sobering, a change in expectations surrounding his future. Palace language. Experts immediately noted the tone. This was not a routine clarification. It was not a temporary adjustment. It was a recognition that certain assumptions about Prince Louis, his role, his path, and the way the institution would shape his life, can no longer stand as they once did. Behind palace walls, aides describe this moment as emotional and unavoidable. A decision has been made not in response to public pressure, but to prevent future harm. And in doing so, the monarchy has quietly acknowledged that the lessons of recent years have not been forgotten. What exactly has the palace confirmed about Prince Louis? Why are senior advisors calling this a protective decision? And how does this announcement reshape the future of the youngest Wales child and the monarchy itself? Tonight, we uncover the truth behind the palace's tragic confirmation about Prince Louis. The palace confirmation regarding Prince Louis arrived without drama, yet its impact was immediate and deeply felt. As with many royal statements of consequence, the language was restrained, almost cautious, as though every word had been weighed against the knowledge that once released, it could never be taken back. The announcement did not describe an incident. It did not reference a crisis. Instead, it acknowledged something far more consequential. The assumptions surrounding Prince Louis' future role within the monarchy are no longer valid. For an institution built on continuity, this was a rare admission. Prince Louis has long occupied a unique place in the public imagination. As the youngest child of the Prince and Princess of Wales, he has often been portrayed as a symbol of lightness, the spirited presence at formal occasions, the reminder that beneath ceremony lies family. Yet today's confirmation reframes that image. It suggests that the palace has taken a deliberate step to ensure that his path will not be shaped by expectation alone. In royal terms, this represents a significant departure from tradition. Younger royals have historically been positioned as reserves of duty, expected to support the crown, fill ceremonial roles, and uphold visibility when required. While flexibility existed in theory, obligation often prevailed in practice. The palace's confirmation signals that this model is being reassessed at its foundation. Behind the statement lies months of quiet evaluation. Royal aides have reportedly been examining how the pressures of modern monarchy affect children born into its center. The conclusion, reached gradually but firmly, was that Prince Louis' future cannot be governed by the same assumptions applied to previous generations. The environment has changed. The cost of exposure has intensified, and the consequences of unresolved pressure have become impossible to ignore. What makes this announcement particularly striking is its timing. Prince Louis is still very young, and historically, discussions about long-term roles would remain firmly behind closed doors. The decision to confirm a shift now suggests that the palace felt a responsibility to set boundaries early, not in response to public curiosity, but to prevent it from hardening into expectation. The palace's wording emphasized protection over planning. It stressed that Prince Louis will be afforded the space to grow without being defined by institutional need. This language reflects a broader philosophical shift within the monarchy, one that prioritizes individual development over symbolic utility. While subtle, the message is clear. The crown is no longer willing to treat its youngest members as structural assets. For Prince William and Catherine, this confirmation reflects a deeply personal stance. As parents, they have witnessed firsthand the intensity of attention surrounding their children. Every gesture is analyzed. Every expression becomes a narrative. The decision to reshape Prince Louis' future expectations appears, rooted in a determination to shield him from a life lived entirely under interpretation. It is a stance shaped not by fear but by experience, the implications for the monarchy are considerable. With Prince Louis no longer positioned as an automatic future support figure, the institution must accept a narrower operational framework. This reinforces a trend already underway: a monarchy defined less by numbers and more by sustainability. It also raises questions about how future duties will be distributed and how continuity will be maintained without expanding demands. Public reaction to the confirmation has been complex. There is sadness, born not of loss, but of recognition. Recognition that a child widely adored for his spontaneity is now being quietly removed from the burden of expectation. There's also relief, an understanding that the palace has learned from past missteps and is choosing prevention over endurance. The tragedy referenced in headlines is therefore not tied to misfortune, but to restraint. It lies in the acknowledgement that the traditional royal path carries risks too great to impose by default. That Prince Louis, once imagined as a future fixture of public life, will instead be allowed to define his relationship with the crown on his own terms. This moment also reframes how the public perceives royal duty. If the youngest members are no longer guaranteed to serve, then service itself becomes a choice rather than an inheritance. That shift challenges long-held assumptions about loyalty and legacy and forces the monarchy to justify its relevance through purpose rather than tradition alone. As Britain absorbs the palace's confirmation, one reality stands out: this is not an ending, but a redefinition. Prince Louis remains part of the royal story, but his role is no longer per-written. The palace has chosen caution over certainty, humanity over rigidity, and in doing so, it has revealed a monarchy quietly learning from its own history, determined not to repeat the same expectations that once fractured the family it now seeks to protect. What the palace confirmed about Prince Louis did not emerge from a single conversation or a sudden concern. It was the result of a longer, quieter reckoning, one shaped by observation, reflection, and an uncomfortable awareness of how deeply the monarchy's traditional expectations have failed some of its youngest members in the past. This decision was not driven by fear of headlines, but by fear of history repeating itself. Within royal circles, there's been growing unease about the psychological weight placed on children born close to the crown. While ceremonial roles appear light from the outside, insiders acknowledge that visibility itself has become a form of pressure. Prince Louis, despite his young age, has already been introduced to the world as a recognizable figure. His expressions are analyzed, his behavior interpreted, his personality narrated by strangers. What once passed as harmless affection has, in the modern era, evolved into constant scrutiny. Senior advisors reportedly raise concerns about how quickly a public narrative can harden around a child. Once established, that narrative becomes difficult to escape. For Prince Louis, often characterized as spirited and expressive, the risk was not criticism, but caricature. The palace recognized that allowing such perceptions to define him from an early age could narrow his future before he ever had the chance to choose it. The decision also reflects lessons drawn from the monarchy's recent past. The institution has witnessed how unresolved expectations can quietly accumulate, turning private strain into public fracture. What began as duty can evolve into resentment when choice is removed. The palace's confirmation suggests an acknowledgement that younger royals should not be expected to absorb institutional pressure simply because they were born into proximity to the throne. Prince William's influence in this process has been central. Those familiar with his thinking say he has become increasingly focused on prevention rather than reaction. He understands that the cost of public life is not evenly distributed, and that children, in particular, lack the tools to navigate a tension they did not invite. For William, redefining Prince Louis' future was not about limiting opportunity, but about preserving agency. Catherine's perspective reinforced this approach. Her long-standing interest in early development and emotional well-being has shaped how she views the intersection of childhood and public exposure. Within the palace, her voice has consistently emphasized that identity must be allowed to form privately before it is tested publicly. The confirmation regarding Prince Louis reflects that belief, that protection is not withdrawal, but preparation. Another factor shaping the palace's decision was the evolving public climate. Unlike previous generations, today's royal children grow up under the gaze of digital media that never forgets. Images and moments are preserved, shared, and reinterpreted endlessly. The palace recognized that Prince Louis' early years would inevitably be revisited as he grows older, often now reduces the likelihood that those moments will be used to define him later. Internally, this prompted a reassessment of what service truly means. The traditional model assumed that contribution required visibility. The modern interpretation, however, allows for influence without exposure. By stepping back from assigning Prince Louis a predefined public role, the palace is exploring a quieter form of continuity, one that values stability over presence. This shift was not without debate. Traditionalists argued that every member of the immediate royal family strengthens the institution simply by being seen. Reducing future participation, they warned, risks diminishing the monarchy's reach. Yet those arguments struggled against a reality the palace could no longer ignore. Visibility without consent is no longer sustainable. Public affection can quickly turn into expectation, and expectation into pressure. The palace's confirmation therefore represents a boundary. It signals that Prince Louis will not be positioned as a solution to institutional needs. He will not be asked to fill gaps created by change or absence elsewhere. His relationship with the monarchy will develop gradually, shaped by his interests rather than obligation. This approach reflects a broader institutional shift toward sustainability. Fewer demands, but deeper consideration. Public response to this reasoning has been quietly emotional. Many see the decision as an act of compassion, particularly given Prince Louis' young age. There is an understanding that the palace is attempting to interrupt a cycle, one where children grow into roles defined for them, long before they understand their cost. The sadness some feel stems not from loss, but from recognition of how necessary this restraint has become. The tragedy, then, lies in the acknowledgement that the traditional path is no longer safe to impose automatically. That the monarchy, once confident in its endurance, must now choose carefully whom it asks to carry its weight. Prince Louis' future has become the clearest expression of that choice. As this decision takes hold, it reshapes expectations not only for Prince Louis, but for the institution itself. The monarchy is signaling that it will no longer rely on the quiet compliance of its youngest members to maintain continuity. Instead, it is accepting a future defined by consent rather than inheritance. In choosing protection over tradition, the palace has revealed an institution learning slowly, cautiously, but deliberately, that survival in the modern era depends not on how much it demands, but on how wisely it restrains itself. As the palace's confirmation settles into public consciousness, attention is shifting from why the decision was made to what it means for Prince Louis himself. While the announcement speaks in institutional language, its deepest impact is personal. It alters not only expectations, but identity, redefining how the youngest Wales child will grow up in the shadow of the crown. Prince Louis has, until now, existed in a uniquely exposed space. Too young to understand public attention, yet old enough to be recognized. He has been viewed through a lens shaped entirely by others. Moments of playfulness were turned into headlines. Expressions of curiosity became viral commentary. While often affectionate, this attention gradually formed a public persona that he had no role in creating. The palace's decision interrupts that process. By confirming that Prince Louis will not be guided toward a predetermined public role, the monarchy is attempting to restore something rare for a royal child, the freedom to develop without narrative pressure. This does not remove him from public awareness, but it loosens the frame through which he is viewed. Instead of being positioned as a future representative by default, he is now allowed to exist first as an individual. This shift has profound implications for how Prince Louis will understand himself as he grows older. In previous generations, younger royals often learned who they were by learning what they were expected to do. Their identities were shaped through obligation. For Louis, that equation is being reversed. His future relationship with the monarchy will emerge from choice rather than assignment, a distinction that may prove crucial to his long-term sense of autonomy. Within the palace, this approach is seen as preventative. Advisors have noted that identity confusion often arises when public expectation collides with private inclination. By refusing to define Louis' path prematurely, The institution hopes to avoid creating internal conflict before it has the chance to form. It is a strategy rooted in restraint, allowing space rather than filling it. The public, too, will have to adjust. Prince Louis has been embraced as a symbol of warmth and spontaneity within the royal family. Those moments will still be remembered, but they will no longer serve as a blueprint for future duty. This requires a subtle but important recalibration in how affection is expressed. Admiration must now coexist with distance, appreciation with respect for privacy. There's also a broader implication for how royal children are perceived collectively. If Prince Louis is granted this freedom, it challenges the assumption that visibility equals contribution. The monarchy is implicitly suggesting that influence does not always require presence. This challenges decades of expectation, not only within the institution, but among the public who have come to equate royal service with appearance. For Prince William and Catherine, the emotional dimension of this decision cannot be overstated. They are navigating a balance between honoring heritage and protecting childhood. The palace's confirmation reflects a determination to prioritize long-term well-being over immediate symbolism. It suggests an understanding that the most responsible choice is not always the most traditional one. Prince Louis' siblings will also be affected by this shift, even indirectly. A family where roles are less rigid allows for healthier dynamics, reducing comparison and competition. By clarifying that Louis' future is not pre-assigned, the palace reduces the likelihood that he will be defined in opposition to others. This is a subtle but meaningful step toward preserving family cohesion within an institution that has historically struggled with it. Critics, however, remain cautious. Some argue that removing expectations too early risks creating uncertainty. Without a clear role, where does Prince Louis belong within the monarchy? The palace appears willing to accept that ambiguity, viewing it as preferable to pressure. In an era defined by choice, ambiguity is no longer seen as weakness, but as possibility. The tragedy referenced in the palace's confirmation is therefore not a singular event, but a recognition of how much has changed. It reflects the understanding that innocence, once lost to public narrative, cannot easily be reclaimed. By acting now, the monarchy is attempting to preserve what remains, not by retreating entirely, but by redefining engagement. As Prince Louis grows, he will inevitably learn about this moment. He will understand that a decision was made on his behalf, not to limit him, but to protect his right to decide. That knowledge may shape how he views the crown, not as an obligation imposed, but as a legacy offered. In the quiet aftermath of the palace's confirmation, one truth stands out. This was not a withdrawal from tradition, but an evolution of it. The monarchy is still present in Prince Louis' life, but it no longer claims ownership of his future. That distinction, subtle yet powerful, may be one of the most consequential shifts the institution has made in a generation, and in granting Prince Louis the freedom to become himself before becoming anything else. The palace has revealed a new understanding of duty, one that begins not with service, but with care. As the palace's confirmation regarding Prince Louis settles into history, its deeper meaning becomes impossible to ignore. This was not merely a decision about one child's future. It was a signal carefully sent, quietly delivered, about how the monarchy now understands its own survival. The crown is no longer insisting on certainty. It is choosing caution. And that choice may define its future more than any ceremony ever could. For centuries, the monarchy projected permanence by assigning roles early and enforcing them consistently. Younger royals were shaped into symbols before they could question what those symbols required of them. That model once ensured stability. Today, it risks fracture. The palace's decision concerning Prince Louis acknowledges that the world in which those traditions were formed no longer exists. This moment reveals an institution learning to step back before it is forced to. Rather than waiting for tension to surface publicly, the palace has drawn a boundary in advance. It has admitted, implicitly but unmistakably, that the cost of expectation can be too high when imposed too early. In doing so, it has chosen prevention over endurance. For the monarchy, this choice carries institutional consequences. A future where Prince Louis is not positioned as a guaranteed public figure means fewer visible representatives, fewer ceremonial reserves, and a narrower public-facing structure. This is not an accident. It reflects a belief that sustainability matters more than scale. The palace appears willing to accept a smaller footprint if it means avoiding the internal strain that has destabilized it before. Public reaction to this shift will evolve over time. In the short term, many experience a sense of sadness, not because something has been taken away, but because something has been acknowledged. The observation is fragile, and the acknowledgement that tradition, left unquestioned, can quietly do harm. Yet there is also reassurance in this moment. By protecting Prince Louis from a prewritten future, the palace is demonstrating a capacity for learning. It is responding not to scandal, but to memory. Memory of how pressure accumulates. Memory of how silence can become resentment. Memory of how public duty, when detached from choice, can erode belonging. For Prince William, this decision aligns with a broader vision of leadership. His future reign is increasingly expected to emphasize credibility over grandeur, stability over spectacle. Allowing Prince Louis to grow without obligation reflects that philosophy. It suggests a monarchy that seeks legitimacy through restraint rather than display, a significant departure from the past. Catherine's influence is equally visible in this recalibration. The emphasis on childhood, emotional development, and identity formation is woven into the palace's language and timing. The confirmation about Prince Louis does not frame protection as retreat, but as responsibility. It reinforces the idea that care is not incompatible with duty. It is essential to it. This moment also sets a precedent that will echo forward. Future royal children will grow up under different assumptions. Their value will no longer be measured by how early they serve, but by how fully they are allowed to become themselves. This challenges the monarchy to redefine contribution in ways that are less performative and more intentional. Critics may argue that this evolution risks weakening the institution's visibility. They may question whether a monarchy that asks less of its members can command the same respect. The palace appears willing to accept that risk. It is betting that modern legitimacy comes not from constant presence, but from moral coherence. From showing that it understands the limits of what it can ask, and when it should stop asking. The tragedy referenced in headlines is therefore quiet and structural. It lies in the realization that the old model no longer works without consequence. That the image of seamless continuity was sustained, in part, by expectations that should never have been placed on children. Prince Louis' altered path is not a loss of tradition, but an admission of its cost. As time passes. This decision may be remembered as a turning point, the moment the monarchy began to treat choice as a safeguard rather than a threat. By refusing to define Prince Louis by obligation, the palace has allowed space for authenticity. And in an era skeptical of inherited authority, authenticity may be the crown's most valuable asset. The palace did not announce a departure. It announced an adjustment, but within that adjustment lies a profound shift in thinking. The crown is no longer assuming that its youngest members exist to sustain it. Instead, it is acknowledging that sustaining them may be the only way it endures. Prince Louis will grow up knowing that a decision was made on his behalf not to diminish his place, but to protect his future. That knowledge may shape his relationship with the monarchy in ways tradition never could. It offers him something rare in royal history, the freedom to choose how or whether he serves. And in granting that freedom, the palace has revealed a monarchy quietly redefining strength, not as the ability to demand loyalty, but as the wisdom to release it when necessary.